The halls of the Red Keep were colder than usual, or maybe it was just Sansa's heart that had frozen. She sat by the window, staring at the black sky outside. King's Landing looked beautiful from a distance, the glowing lanterns, the gentle waves crashing below, but nothing felt beautiful anymore. Not after her father's death. Not after Joffrey showed her his true face. Sansa was still grieving when Sir Meryn Trant came into her chamber with heavy footsteps. Behind him, a smaller figure entered. It was Queen Cersei. Her golden hair shimmered in the torchlight, but her face had no warmth. "His Grace wants you to write a letter, dear," Cersei said sweetly, though there was a sharpness behind her voice. Sansa stood up slowly. "A letter? To who?" "To your brother, Robb Stark," the Queen replied, almost smiling. Sansa's stomach tightened. "What do I say?" Cersei stepped closer, touching Sansa's cheek gently. "You will ask him to bend the knee, to stop the fighting. You will tell him that you miss him, that the North should stay loyal to the crown. You will write as a loving sister who's worried." "But that's not true," Sansa whispered. "Robb is fighting because they killed my father." Cersei's hand gripped Sansa's face a little harder. "Truth doesn't matter here, child. Only what the king commands." Behind her, Sir Meryn didn't move, his face like stone. Sansa looked at both of them and knew there was no choice. Later, in the silent hours of the night, she was seated at her desk, a quill in her shaking hand, her eyes blurred with tears. Joffrey stood behind her, watching. He was dressed in rich gold and red robes, his lips curled in a cruel smile. "Go on," he said. "Tell your precious Robb that he's a traitor, that the king will show mercy if he surrenders. If he doesn't," Joffrey leaned in, his voice cold, "we'll send his head back to you, like we did with your father's." Sansa's hand trembled, but she began writing. "My dear brother Robb, please stop this war. I fear for your life. The king is merciful. If you kneel and swear loyalty, all will be forgiven." She paused. It was a lie, a trap. She knew what they were doing. They wanted to break her, use her, but if she refused, they would hurt her, or worse, they'd go after Robb and her sisters. "Keep going," Joffrey said sharply, his voice now irritated. Sansa swallowed and kept writing. Each word felt like poison. Her tears smudged the ink, but she didn't stop. When the letter was done, Joffrey picked it up and read it out loud with mocking glee. "Oh, how touching, so full of love and fear. Your wolf brother will believe every word." Sansa wanted to scream, but she stayed silent. That was the only way to survive here, silent, still, obedient. After Joffrey left, Sansa collapsed on the bed, hugging a pillow to her chest. Her hands still smelled of ink, her heart still full of guilt. She stared at the ceiling, thinking of Winterfell, of Robb, of her mother, of everything she had lost. She didn't know if Robb would believe her letter. She didn't know what the Lannisters would do next. But deep inside, she promised herself one day she would make them pay. The raven flew fast, gliding over fields and rivers, far from the golden towers of King's Landing to the cold winds of the north. In Robb Stark's war tent, the letter arrived just before dawn. He was seated near a map, studying battle lines, when the flap of the tent opened. "A raven from King's Landing, my lord," said Maester Luwin softly, handing him the scroll. Robb's heart skipped a beat when he saw the handwriting. It was Sansa's, his little sister. He hadn't seen her since they took their father's head in front of a screaming crowd. He opened it carefully, hands slightly shaking. "My dear brother Robb," he read it slowly, eyes narrowing. It was filled with soft words, careful language, pleading tone. Too careful, too clean. It didn't sound like Sansa, not the real Sansa. It sounded like someone had forced her hand. "She's asking you to bend the knee," said Grachon Umber from across the table, frowning. "You think she truly means this?" Robb said nothing for a moment. His jaw tightened. Then he folded the letter, and placed it down. They made her write it. Are you sure? I know my sister, Robb said. She would never ask me to kneel to the man who killed our father. This is Cersei's work, or Joffrey's. He looked at the words again. Something about them didn't sit right. The king is merciful. No. Sansa had seen what Joffrey did to their father. She wouldn't call him merciful. They're using her, Robb said, the anger in his voice rising. They're holding her in the Red Keep like a bird in a cage, and now they want to use her words like a sword against me. He stood up, pushing the chair back with force. The map fluttered in the breeze. I will not be fooled. Back in King's Landing, Sansa sat silently during breakfast with Queen Cersei. The table was full of fine foods, honeyed ham, fresh fruits, warm bread, but her stomach had turned to stone. You did well with the letter, Cersei said, sipping from her cup. We sent copies to the major houses. They'll all see your loyalty to the crown. Sansa looked up slowly. I didn't say I was loyal. Cersei smiled, like a lioness watching a rabbit speak. Ah, but they will think you are, and that's what matters. You see, sweet girl, in this world, perception is everything. Truth is a luxury for fools. Sansa said nothing. She hated Cersei's smile the most. It reminded her of the way Joffrey smiled before ordering someone's pain. What if Robb doesn't believe it? She asked, her voice small. Cersei placed her goblet down with a quiet clink. Then we'll find another way. Don't worry, dear. We're just beginning. There will be more letters. Sansa's heart dropped. More lies, more betrayal. That evening she was summoned again, this time by Lord Baelish Petyr, as her mother once called him. He stood in the garden, hands folded neatly behind his back, eyes full of secrets. You look more like your mother every day, he said softly. Sansa didn't reply. I hear the letter was well received, he continued. The Lannisters think they've planted a seed of doubt in Robb's camp. Imagine what happens when a lord begins to wonder if Robb Stark's sister has already bent to the crown. Sansa's breath caught. They'll stop trusting him, Baelish nodded. Exactly. Words are more dangerous than swords in this game. She looked away, hating the truth of it. I didn't mean for that to happen. But you wrote the letter. They forced me. Petyr stepped closer, lowering his voice. That may be true, but it's your name at the bottom. In war, there are no clean hands, just blood and survival. Sansa's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. Not here, not in front of him. You want to protect your brother? He asked, voice gentle now. Then learn how this game works. You'll need to lie, deceive, and wear a smile while doing it. She didn't answer, but inside, something was changing. She had always been a pawn, Joffrey's toy, Cersei's puppet. But maybe, just maybe, she could learn to move on the board herself. Sansa stood in front of the mirror, the silk dress clinging to her frame like a second skin. Her handmaid brushed her hair gently, but her mind was far away. She no longer saw the soft colours of her dress or the jewellery hanging from her neck. She was thinking about Robb, about her letter, and about the way Lord Baelish had spoken to her last night. In war, there are no clean hands, just blood and survival. Those words kept repeating in her head. She had spent so long trying to stay quiet, to behave, to avoid Joffrey's wrath, but now, she realized silence wasn't saving her. It was only making her easier to use. Later that day, she was summoned again, this time not by Joffrey or Cersei, but by Lord Varys, the Spider. The man with no scent, no expression, and far too many secrets. He welcomed her with soft words in the Tower of the Hand. Candles flickered around them, shadows dancing on stone. "You're looking well, Lady Sansa," he said, bowing his bald head. "I doubt that's true," she replied, folding her hands to stop them from shaking. Varys gave a thin smile. "You're still breathing. In this city, that's a rare kind of beauty." She didn't know whether to thank him or take it as a warning. "You must be wondering why I asked you here," he continued. "I heard about your letter. Poor thing, forced to write against your own brother. I didn't have a choice." "No, you didn't. But choices are coming, and you must be ready to make the right ones." Sansa narrowed her eyes. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing yet. I only want to remind you, everyone who smiles at you here smiles with a dagger behind their back. Cersei sees you as a pawn, Joffrey sees you as a toy. Baelish sees you as, well, something he can mold." "And you?" she asked boldly. "I see you as a girl with a dangerous future," he said quietly, "and that makes you worth watching." That night, Sansa lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. The Red Keep no longer felt like a prison, it felt like a game board, and every person she met was playing, lying, scheming. Maybe it was time she started playing too. Meanwhile, in Robb's camp, the mood was shifting. The letter had planted seeds, just as the Lannisters intended. Lord Karstark approached Robb's tent late at night, looking troubled. "My lord, some of the smaller houses are whispering. They wonder if your sister has turned." Robb clenched his fists. "She hasn't. They think otherwise. A Stark writing against her own blood. It looks bad, Robb. She was forced." Karstark hesitated. "That may be. But your men, they're losing faith." Robb turned away, hiding his face in the shadows. The war was already difficult. Battles won, yes, but the cost was high. And now, the Lannisters were stabbing him in a different way, not with swords, but with ink, lies, and letters. Back in King's Landing, the Lannisters weren't done. Cersei stood over a desk in her chambers, writing something herself this time. A new letter, one that would go out to every corner of Westeros. When she finished, she handed it to Maester Pycelle. "Send copies to the Lords of the Vale, the Reach, and beyond. Let the world see the Stark girl's loyalty to the crown. Let them doubt Robb. Let them question everything." She smiled to herself. The trap had been set. The next morning, Joffrey was in the throne room, sitting on that ugly, twisted iron throne, his legs swinging like a child's. He looked pleased. "I hear the North is whispering," he said to Sansa, who stood silently near the steps. "Good. That means they're scared." Sansa kept her face still. Her eyes were lowered, but inside she wasn't scared. Not anymore. She was learning. "Write him another letter," Joffrey said suddenly. "Tell him the king wants peace. Maybe he'll be stupid enough to come south." Sansa looked up, just for a moment. "And if he does? Then I'll cut off his head too," Joffrey said with a giggle. The court laughed. But Sansa didn't. She was already thinking of what she would write. Not what Joffrey wanted, but something more dangerous. A message Robb would understand. A hidden code. A warning, maybe. Something that said, "I'm still your sister. Don't trust what you read." Yes, she would write it. Let them believe she was broken. Let them believe she was theirs. But the game was changing. And this time, Sansa Stark wasn't just surviving. She was beginning to play. Sansa sat alone in her chamber, a fresh piece of parchment laid out in front of her. The candle beside her flickered gently, casting long shadows over the page. She could still hear Joffrey's voice from earlier, echoing like poison in her head. "Write him another letter. Tell him the king wants peace." But she wasn't going to write what they wanted this time. Not exactly. Her hand trembled only slightly as she dipped the quill in ink. She had cried the first time. This time, there were no tears. Just careful words, arranged like a hidden blade. "My dearest brother, I write to you again, not only as a sister, but as someone who sees clearly now. The city is calm, the king is merciful, and the queen gentle in her counsel." She paused. Those words were sweet lies, but that was the surface, she continued. "I am treated well. You need not worry. The lions are sharp, but they do not see the mice hiding in the walls. I miss the snow. I miss the quiet of the godswood. I miss home. There. That was her message. Robb would understand. The lions are sharp, the Lannisters, but they do not see the mice, Sansa herself, and the Godswood Winterfell, their place of truth, their home. Be cautious, Robb. Even the softest voices may be borrowed. Sometimes the words are not our own. That line was her warning, that her letters weren't truly hers, that she was being used. She ended the letter and read it again. To the Lannisters, it would look like another plea to surrender. But to Robb, it would sound like a heartbeat behind a wall. A quiet knock saying, "I'm still here. I haven't given up." She sealed it with the Stark sigil and gave it to the handmaid, who would pass it to the maester. Then she waited. And while she waited, she smiled at Joffrey when he mocked her in court. She bowed her head to Cersei when the Queen complimented her loyalty. She played her part so well that even Sir Meryn, who watched her like a hawk, began to loosen his glare. But she was never truly calm. She was counting every word. Far in the north, Robb received the letter days later, the parchment cold in his hands. He read it once, then again. Something about it tugged at his memory. The lions are sharp, but they do not see the mice. He frowned, then looked at Catelyn, his mother, who stood beside him. "She's speaking in code," he said quietly. "She's trying to tell us she's being watched." Catelyn's eyes scanned the letter. "You think she's still herself?" "I know she is." But then came the harder part. He turned to Lord Bolton, who had entered just minutes ago with troubling news. "The Lords of the Vale refuse to send men. They think we can't be trusted, that we've lost even our own sister." Robb cursed under his breath. "Damn the Lannisters! They've poisoned your name," Bolton said calmly. "Your sister's words are being used against you in every hall, from the Riverlands to the Reach. Letters copied, shared, whispers spread." "They were forced," Robb growled. "Sansa is not the enemy." "Perception matters more than truth, my lord," Bolton replied. "As long as she remains in King's Landing, they will keep using her." Robb turned to the map again, his eyes moving from Harrenhal to the capital. "We need to get her out." His mother looked at him, startled. "Robb." "Then we find someone who walks among lions." Back in King's Landing, Sansa was summoned again by Lord Baelish. This time he was alone. No guards, just him in the quiet of the Godswood. "You wrote again," he said, hands folded neatly. "I admire your courage." "I wrote what I had to," she said softly. He looked at her for a long moment. "You're learning." "I'm surviving. Soon, you'll need more than that." He stepped closer. "The Lannisters are planning something cruel. Another game. They want to parade you before the court as proof that the Starks are no longer loyal, that the North is falling apart." "What will they make me say next?" she asked bitterly. "Something worse," Baelish said. "Something that can't be taken back." Sansa's breath hitched. "And if I refuse?" "You know the answer." She looked away. Then Baelish said something she wasn't ready for. "I might be able to get you out." Her head snapped toward him. "Not now," he added quickly. "But soon. When the time is right. But you'll have to trust me." Sansa didn't know if she could. He was a liar, a manipulator, but so were all the others, and he was the only one who had ever hinted at escape. She stared at the weirwood tree in front of them, and for the first time in weeks she felt the faintest breath of hope. The throne room was packed. Courtiers in gold-trimmed cloaks and fine silks lined the hall like vultures waiting for a meal. Noble ladies whispered behind lace fans. Lords leaned on their staffs, some curious, some cruel. Joffrey sat high above them all, lounging on the iron throne with one leg over the other, looking far too pleased. Sansa stood in the center of the room, hands clasped tightly, heart pounding in her chest. She wore a soft blue gown, the colour Cersei had chosen for her, and her hair was done up in southern style, far from how her mother used to braid it back home. Queen Cersei stepped forward with that smooth, polished smile of hers. "Lady Sansa has prepared something special for us today," she announced, her voice ringing out like poisoned honey, a message of peace, a plea to her brother, King in the North, to stop this pointless bloodshed. A quiet ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd. Sansa felt her knees weaken. She had been warned, forced, threatened. "You will read it out loud before the court," Joffrey had said. "And if you cry or falter, I'll have Sir Meryn beat your pretty face black and blue." A servant handed her the parchment. She could see her own handwriting, words she had written, while a Lannister guard stood behind her, blade at his hip. She looked up, her mouth dry. Joffrey grinned like a boy watching a cat with its tail pinned. Sansa took a deep breath, and she began to read. "To my brother Robb Stark, King Joffrey Baratheon has shown me kindness and mercy, and I beg you, for the sake of our house, to put down your sword. This war has cost too many lives. I believe peace can still be found. I believe the crown wishes to end this bloodshed, if only you will kneel." Each word tasted like ash. Each sentence was a lie stuffed into her mouth. She kept her voice steady, even when her hands shook. Behind her, she could feel the mocking smiles, the quiet laughter. But then something shifted. She stopped reading for just half a second. Her eyes moved across the hall until they landed on Lord Varys, who was watching her carefully. Next to him, Petyr Baelish stood with his arms folded, studying her with something close to pride. Even he could see it. Sansa was no longer just reading. She was acting. She cleared her throat and spoke louder, firmer. "I have seen the generosity of the Queen. I have seen the strength of the King. The lions do not roar to hurt, but to protect." She added that line. It wasn't in the letter. Cersei raised an eyebrow. But the room listened. "And I, who once feared the South, now see its beauty. I do not recognize the cold anymore." Another lie. Another message. Robb would know. He would know Sansa was trying to speak through the chains. She finished the letter, bowed slightly, and stepped back. The room applauded. Cersei smiled like a fox. Joffrey nodded proudly, like he'd trained his favorite pet. But Varys narrowed his eyes. And Littlefinger smirked. Far in the north, Robb threw a goblet across the room when he heard of the letter being read aloud. "She's being paraded like a puppet," he shouted. "They're using her to make us look weak." Catelyn tried to calm him. "She's still alive, Robb. She's doing what she can. She's suffering, and she's surviving." Robb's chest heaved. "They humiliate her publicly. They make her speak against her own blood. Every house that hears those words thinks the North is crumbling." He turned to his bannermen. "Then we must remind them we are not broken." "How?" asked Lord Tully. "We're still too far. We can't reach her." Robb looked at the map and pointed to a place that chilled the tent. "Harrenhal," he said. Lord Bolton raised a brow. "You plan to strike Harrenhal?" "No," Robb said. "I plan to bait Tywin there, and when he rides out, we move fast and take a path to the capital. I want a raiding party. No banners, no warning." Catelyn's eyes widened. "You want to sneak into King's Landing?" "No," Robb said coldly. "I want someone who can." He looked to the shadows. From them stepped a man in black, a sellsword. No sigil, no oaths, just coin and skill. Robb held up a letter. "This one won't be copied. This one's going straight to Sansa." Back in King's Landing, Sansa returned to her room, shaken but proud. She had played her part. She had spoken their lies. But hidden inside those words was a fire growing. And now a letter was coming to her, one that would change everything. The letter came hidden inside a basket of sweet cakes. Sansa was seated by the window when her handmaid Shay entered with the tray. The sun was low in the sky, casting gold over the stone floors of her room. She hadn't eaten all day. Her stomach had been too twisted since her public humiliation in the throne room. "From the kitchens," Shay said in a low voice, her eyes darting toward the guards standing outside the door. Sansa nodded, trying to seem disinterested. She waited until Shay turned away, then carefully pulled one of the cakes apart. And there it was, folded thinly inside the layers of linen beneath the pastries. A note, tiny. No sigil, no wax seal. Her heart skipped as she unfolded it under the table. The godswood. Midnight. Come alone. No signature, no name, just those 6 words. But Sansa knew. It was from someone on Robb's side. It had to be. The risk was great. The Red Keep was full of eyes, some loyal to Cersei, others to Varys, and too many to Baelish. If she was caught sneaking out in the middle of the night, they'd think she was plotting treason. They wouldn't just beat her, they'd hang her. But she also knew this was her chance. So, at midnight, she slipped out. The halls were deathly quiet. Only the occasional sound of a guard's boots echoed in the distance. Shay had left a bundle of servant clothes in her chamber. Sansa wore them now, her face covered, moving like a shadow through the keep. She avoided the main corridors, took the servant stairs, past the cold stone walls, until she reached the outer courtyard. The godswood was ahead, dark, still. She pushed open the gate and slipped inside. The weirwood tree stood in the center, pale and ghostly under the moonlight. Its red leaves rustled gently in the breeze. And there, beneath its twisted roots, stood a man, tall, hooded, a sword at his side. Sansa froze. "Lady Sansa," he said, his voice low but steady. "I've come from the north, from your brother." She blinked. "Are you a knight?" He shook his head. "Not anymore." "Then who are you?" "I'm someone who owes your family a debt." He stepped forward, slowly, and handed her a folded letter. She recognized Robb's handwriting instantly. "Sansa, we've heard everything. We know you're playing their game. I'm proud of you. Help is coming. Be ready. When the bells ring twice at dawn, go to the stables. The rest will be waiting." Sansa's throat tightened. She could barely breathe. This was real. Not a whisper, not a trick. A real plan. A real escape. "But how?" she whispered. "They watch me. Every minute." "Leave that to us," the man said. "Just be ready." Before she could say more, he turned and disappeared into the shadows. Sansa stood there, alone, heart pounding like a drum. The next day, things turned worse. Cersei summoned her just after breakfast. She stood in the Queen's chambers, surrounded by her handmaidens and a dozen guards. "I hear you've been sneaking around," Cersei said with a cold smile. Sansa's blood ran cold. "Did they know?" "I haven't," she said quickly. "I only walk in the gardens." "You're lying," Cersei snapped, stepping forward. "You've grown bold lately, speaking like a true little queen in front of the court, whispering things in pretty layers. I swear I've done nothing wrong." Cersei slapped her. The crack echoed through the room. Sansa stumbled, her cheek stinging, but she didn't fall. "You forget where you are," Cersei hissed. "You are not his sister anymore. You are a hostage, a tool." Sansa looked up slowly, fire burning behind her eyes. "Then use me," she said quietly. "But you'll never have me." Cersei's lips curled. "We'll see." That night, Sansa couldn't sleep. Her cheek still burned, her thoughts twisted with fear. But she held on to Robb's letter, hidden inside her sleeve. She read it again and again until the ink seemed to beat like a second heart. When the bells ring twice at dawn, she didn't know how they would ring the bells, or who would be waiting in the stables. But she didn't care. Hope had returned to her like a breath of Winterfell wind, sharp, cold, but clean. They would come for her. She just had to hold on a little longer. But what she didn't know was that someone else had also seen her sneak through the keep that night. Someone who didn't serve the queen, or the king, or even Robb. Someone who served only himself. And he was already planning to use her escape for his own twisted gain. The bells rang, not once, but twice slow, deep tolls that echoed across the sleeping city like a warning from the gods themselves. Sansa shot up from her bed, fully dressed beneath the covers. Her heart thundered so loudly she was sure the guards outside would hear it. But no one came. The bells had done their work, drawing attention toward the septs, toward the high towers. She slipped on her cloak, tucked Robb's letter into her bodice, and stepped into the corridor. The guards were gone, just as promised. She moved fast, her soft shoes silent against the stone floor. Shay had left the servant doors unlatched, and Sansa ducked through them, heart pounding with every step. Down narrow stairwells, through the cold bowels of the castle, until she saw the flickering lantern light ahead. The stables. 2 horses stood ready, saddled and restless. Beside them waited the same hooded man from the Godswood. "You came," he said simply. "I had to." Another figure stepped out of the shadows, a stable boy, no older than 12. Sansa's eyes widened when she recognized him. "Podrick?" He gave her a quick nod, nervous and pale. Sir Brienne sent me. She couldn't come herself. Too many eyes." Sansa's throat tightened. She hadn't even known Brienne was near the capital. "She's with Lord Tully's men now, hidden outside the city. We just have to get past the gates." Sansa mounted the horse without hesitation. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were steady. "I'm ready," she said. But just as they turned to ride out, the gate burst open. Steel clanged. Torches lit the night. And standing in the path were 4 Lannister guards, swords drawn. Sansa froze. The hooded man drew his blade instantly. "Ride, now." He charged at the guards without fear, slashing into the first one before they could even shout. Podrick grabbed Sansa's reins and pulled her horse toward the side exit. But then, "Stop them!" A familiar voice rang out through the courtyard. Lord Baelish. He stepped out from the shadows, calm as ever, his cloak fluttering behind him. No sword, no panic, just quiet control, as always. Sansa's blood ran cold. He'd seen everything. "You planned this," she whispered, pulling the horse to a halt. Pettir's eyes locked onto hers. "I allowed it," he said smoothly. "There's a difference." The hooded man was already bleeding, outnumbered, driven back by the Lannister guards. Podrick looked like he might cry. Sansa's hands gripped the reins tighter. "Why? Why stop us now?" "I told you, Sansa," he said, walking slowly toward her horse. "Everything in this city is a trade. You don't get to leave unless I get something in return. You betrayed Robb." He tilted his head. "Robb is losing. He just doesn't know it yet. But you could still be valuable." The hooded man fell to his knees behind them, blood soaking his cloak. Podrick held a dagger now, his hands shaking, but Sansa reached out and pushed it down. "No," she whispered. "There's no winning here. Not tonight." Baelish looked at her softly. "That's the clever girl I see now, not just a Stark, but someone who survives." The guards didn't arrest her, they didn't chain her, they just stood waiting, like wolves following their master's nod. Baelish stepped forward and gently took the reins from her hand. "I can still help you leave," he said. "But next time, it will be on my terms." Sansa stared at him, fury burning behind her quiet expression. "And what will it cost me?" He gave her the smallest of smiles. "Only your trust." She looked at the blood on the stones, at the boy beside her, frightened and silent, at the broken body of the man who came for her. Then she turned her horse around and rode back into the darkness of the Red Keep. Later that night, Alone in her chamber, Sansa scrubbed her hands raw. Not from dirt, not from blood, from guilt. She had tasted freedom, smelled it in the night air, felt it in the way her horse's hooves pounded against the stone. And then it had been snatched away, not by Lannisters, not by Joffrey, but by a man who claimed to love her. Baelish had played his piece, and now she was his pawn again. But she swore to herself, as she sat trembling in the candlelight, one day she would no longer be a piece. She would be the one moving the board, even if she had to burn it all down to do it. The morning after the failed escape, the sky over King's Landing turned grey, heavy with the weight of winter clouds. The air was still, but tension crackled in the corridors of the Red Keep like a storm waiting to break. Sansa woke early, her eyes hollow from a night without sleep. Her hands still hurt from where she had scrubbed them raw. But something inside her had changed. The fear was still there, yes, but it had a new shape now. It no longer made her shrink, it made her sharper. There was a knock at the door. She already knew who it would be. When she opened it, Baelish stood there, wearing that same gentle smile that now made her skin crawl. "I thought you might like a walk," he said. "The Queen has eased her watch on you. For now." Sansa didn't speak. She simply stepped into the hallway and began walking. He followed, as always, just a step behind, like a shadow. They reached the gardens overlooking the Blackwater. The wind tugged at her cloak. The sea below crashed softly against the rocks, as if whispering secrets only the brave could hear. Baelish leaned against the railing. "You're angry." "I should be," she replied quietly. "I saved your life," he said. "If I hadn't stopped that escape, you would have been caught, executed, or worse." "You didn't do it to save me," she said, eyes fixed on the water. "You did it to own me." He smiled faintly. "You understand now. That's good. I understand more than you think." Baelish turned to face her fully. "Then prove it. Let me make you strong. Cersei will fall, Joffrey will fall, all of them, but not us, not if we move the right pieces." "And what piece am I?" she asked, turning to him. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Sansa nodded slowly, then stepped away from the balcony. "I'll remember that." A week passed. Sansa returned to court with her mask on. She smiled, she curtsied. She spoke gently when Joffrey insulted her, and even laughed when the Queen commented on how loyal she had become. But beneath it all, she was listening, watching. Every whispered conversation, every face, every move. Because now she knew the truth. King's Landing didn't run on justice or honor. It ran on secrets, and secrets could kill. Then came the news. Robb Stark was dead, slaughtered at the twins during a wedding, betrayed by allies, cut down like an animal, along with his mother and his men. The moment she heard, something in her cracked. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply stood still as stone while the entire court buzzed around her, pretending to mourn while hiding their smirks. Later, alone in her room, she collapsed to the floor. Not from grief, though the grief was bottomless, but from fury. They had taken everything from her. Her father, her wolf, her home, her brother, and now the game was truly over. Unless she played it herself. That night, she went to Baelish. He greeted her with his usual half-smile. "You've heard," he said. "Yes," she replied. "He's dead. And yet, you're still alive. Which means you're still valuable." "No," she said, stepping closer. "I'm dangerous now." Baelish looked amused. "What do you want, my lady?" Sansa raised her chin. "I want out of here. And what will you give in return?" She smiled, but it wasn't sweet. It was sharp. "I'll give you something no one else can. A name, a future, the North." He studied her for a long time. "You sound like someone ready to play the game." "I'm not playing," she whispered. "I'm rewriting the rules. He smiled wider. Then, let's begin. In the weeks that followed, whispers began to stir. Sansa was seen walking the gardens with foreign diplomats. She exchanged glances with Ser Dontos. She spoke kindly to Varys. Even Cersei noticed. "She's changed," the Queen muttered. "Too quiet, too controlled." "She's growing up," Baelish said with a knowing look. But no one knew what Sansa was truly doing. Planting seeds, making notes, finding cracks. And one night, as the moon shone bright over the Red Keep, she stood before her mirror, brushed her hair smooth and whispered, "I am not a dove in a cage." She paused, eyes cold and steady. "I am the wolf in their garden."